The Knowledgeable Provider podcast is intended primarily to entertain, also to inform, but it is not a substitute for actual medical training and should not be used by anyone to diagnose or treat any medical condition in themselves or others. If you need medical advice, please make an appointment to see your own knowledgeable medical provider. The opinions expressed by me and anyone else who happens to appear on the podcast are solely those of the people expressing them and are not necessarily representative of any other entities. Other than the lunches at the office, I do not receive any sort of compensation from pharmaceutical or medical device companies, and I have no other relevant financial disclosures. Look, this is all for fun, okay? Don't sue me. All right, on with the show. Michael David Smith, welcome to Knowledgeable Provider. Thanks so much for your time, man. I've been looking forward to talking with you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
You want to introduce yourself?
Well, again, Michael David Smith, grew up in the White Oak community in eastern Colbert County, went to Colbert County High School, graduated there in 1997. Met the love of my life during that time, Rena Bolton, and we got married in 2001, moved into some family property that they had there in Cherokee, and so I've been in Cherokee ever since. We have two children, Ethan, who just graduated college this past week, and Riley, who will be finishing up her 10th grade year and going to be a junior at Cherokee High School. We attend the Mauled Church of Christ, where I serve as a deacon there. So most recently, I am a retired EMA and 911 director here in Colbert County and moving on to other things and just trying to see what's next in life.
The next podcast I invite you back for is going to be financial planning, because I need to know how to retire when I'm, how old are you, 45?
45.
Man.
You know, the key to that is just getting into a retirement system early. It hasn't really done anything for my financial well-being yet. And as a matter of fact, I have an appointment with a financial advisor for the first time ever in my life over the next few weeks. So the key to that is getting into a system early and staying in it. I had so many people tell me when I got in it at 18 years old, and it really wasn't what I wanted to do. And people would say, state retirement, if you will just stick with it, you'll be glad you did. And I did make a few changes over time, but every time that I went somewhere else, it was always somewhere else that had state retirement. So I continued to build that credit up. After I got in it for 15 and 20 years, and I'm like, I am close to the end now. I'm glad I did stick with it. And so now here we are.
That's amazing. I'm so jealous. Well, I've been a fan for a long time. You and I used to run calls out on the ambulance together when we were kids. And
yes.
You've always just been a stand-up guy and a great EMT and a great friend. And I really appreciate everything you've done for the community and the county. And I appreciate your time to come talk to me today.
I appreciate that too. I was thinking after we talked the other day to set this up about so many times you and I were on the ambulance together and the calls that we've run, and in the middle of the night coming back to Cherokee and just talking stupid stuff and laughing our heads off and just being hilarious. And we had good times. We had really good times, and I appreciated that.
I agree with that. I miss those days a little bit. So anyway, I'm interested in talking about the whole EMA, the emergency management situation. What led you into that field in the first place?
Originally, I wanted to do computer stuff. I had all intentions of going into computer programming, and actually did start that in college right after high school, even as I was working in 911. But kind of what piqued my interest was the ice storm of 1994. My stepdad was a machinist, and he had a machine shop, and he had a wood stove in that machine shop. And so our power was out for 2 weeks, just like many other people during that ice storm. And that during the night, one night, that machine shop caught on fire from the wood stove. And so the White Oak Volunteer Fire Department, which was where I lived at the time, they came out and extinguished the fire. But while they were out there, one of their trucks broke down. And so with all the power being off everywhere, nobody could really work on the truck at the time. So that truck sat in the driveway for nearly 2 weeks, and I crawled all over it. And I was a 10th grader at the time, so kind of sparked interest. And then later on in junior and senior year, my friend Kelly joined the Nitrate City Fire Department. And so he kept encouraging me to, become a part of it. And he would tell me about these calls he was going on. And I kind of continued to pursue that and see what that was all about. And so I decided as a senior to go ahead and join the White Oak Volunteer Fire Department. So doing that and having the interest in the technical side, the communication side, I started going to the 911 center on weekends and just sitting for a few hours and just kind of watching what they do. And I got really interested in that. And then 2 weeks out of high school, they hired me. And so I started out as a part-time dispatcher. I was still going to school to do computer programming, and that's really what I had intended to do. After my first semester, I got offered a full-time night shift position, and we worked 12 hours, so it was 7 nights on and 7 nights off, and that made it hard to go to school. And so I took a break from school at that point. Eventually joined the rescue squad once I started hanging out down here in Cherokee, and so that sparked my interest to be an EMT. Ended up going back to school to get my EMT certification and worked my way up through the ranks at 911. Worked for Keller EMS for about a 10-year stint. Just all the things that happened all started right there with crawling on a fire truck in my driveway and during an ice storm in 1994. And 27 years later, now retiring from that career and continuing to stay in the field, which I guess we'll talk about later, but it's been really a dream come true. It's something that, especially once we got into it and really started looking at the future and what that would look like, we set these goals and these plans of what we wanted to do, and here we are. It's happening, and it's just been exciting.
It's always neat to look back over a person's life or career and see the turning points. And a lot of times it's nothing you would have expected,
Yeah. We say a lot of times somebody will ask me, I'm a huge college football fan and high school football fan too. I announce the football games here at Cherokee because I just love it so much. And people ask me all the time, why didn't you play football in school? And I don't really know why I didn't. While my friends who played football were at football practice every day, especially that senior year after I had joined the fire department, I was hanging out at the fire department every day, And I sometimes I do think back though, and I'll say, well, if I had played football, I probably wouldn't have joined the fire department because I wouldn't have had time for it. And I wouldn't have the life I have now. I wouldn't know the people that I know now. I wouldn't be involved with the things I know now. Probably wouldn't have been involved in EMA and 911. So like you say, it is crazy how these one little turning points here or there just change your life projection from here on out.
I'm finding there's this theme among emergency people, public safety people who got involved very young. I felt like our little group was kind of unique in that, but it's actually, I think it's really common in the field. People get in the Explorer program and then just it takes off. A lot of people have expressed to me some degree of like, I could have done something else in high school or college. And is that good or bad? Or I have my own complicated feelings about that.
I do look back sometimes, but I never do regret where I'm at. I feel like God's put me here for a reason, and this was the path that I was supposed to take. And so that's what we're carrying on with, and I enjoy it very much.
I love that. Gosh, I love hearing you say that. Awesome. I feel like people probably have a pretty good idea of what 911 does, but what's EMA and what's the relationship between EMA and 911?
Okay, so in Colbert County, it's a dual role position. So the one person is the director over emergency management and 911. And a lot of reason for that is because it is co-located in the same building. 911 started in Colbert County in 1994. And so at that time and for a long time, 911 was a very small organization. And so it would just made sense for one person all in the same building together, the same office together, to kind of be over that and head out over that. So there was a lot of times we would tell people that would come in, either new employees or people that would come in for a tour or whatever, and we were taking them through the building. And we would say, even though EMA and 911 are really two separate entities, really the only thing that separates them is that one door between the EOC and the dispatch room. It really does work together in a lot of ways. Now, in a lot of places too, there's where they are separate. There's a need for that as well, because over the years, especially with technology, 911 has grown so much that it almost can stand on its own and really does in a lot of places, especially in the larger counties. So what is emergency management? The Emergency Management Agency is really in place to support citizens and emergency personnel to build and sustain and improve their capabilities to be able to prepare for disasters, protect themselves against those disasters, help responders respond to those disasters, and then help everybody from responders to citizens and business and industry and private sector and all that recover from those hazards, and then plan toward how do we make that better the next time. So we can't stop a disaster from happening, but we can put some mitigation measures in place that would help us protect ourselves better for the next time. So for example, this storm shelter that we're sitting in now, when a tornado comes, we can't stop a tornado. We can't build a wall to make it go somewhere else. So how do we fix that? How do we protect our people? We give them a safe place to go. And so that's really, from a very high level overview, what emergency management does for the community and the responders as well.
You mentioned tornadoes. What other kinds of things do you plan for?
Oh gosh. So we're not only working with severe weather, but man-made hazards, hazardous material spills, and even nowadays technological stuff, cybersecurity.
Really?
Cybersecurity is a huge thing that has grown over the last several years and now has become part of our all hazards mitigation plan that we have to kind of plan for and help recover from, because we all rely on this technology to help us work nowadays. And so if some cyber attack comes in and shuts all that down, what do we do? How do we recover from that? And how do we continue our operations in those aspects? And so we had to plan ahead for stuff like that as well. So we're talking about severe weather. We're talking about terrorism, large flooding events, cybersecurity, all these different things that we have to now plan for. It went from a smaller realm of things until now our plans all incorporate this term called all hazards. Okay. And so we're really planning for just about anything that could impact the daily life of any citizen here.
I would not have even thought of cybersecurity as being in that realm. Yeah, but it makes sense. Yeah. We were talking off mic about COVID. You had just kind of taken over that position when COVID happened, right?
Yes. So I started back as the director in June of 19, and by the fall and the winter of 19 going into early 20, COVID was finally starting to make its way over into the United States. And you had a case here or there, and we've dealt with pandemics in the past, and it really hasn't become much of anything. And so we kind of thought this may be the same thing. We would have a few cases, we would run through our plans and protect folks and be done with it. And man, that did not turn out the way we thought it would. And so really hit hard there in March and finally just basically shut the whole nation down. And it was something new for us. It was something that while we had plans in place, we had never really exercised those plans to that degree. And in a lot of ways, and this happens with all of our responses, you plan for one thing and it don't always happen the way you plan for it. And so you have to kind of be ready to audible and change it up. And so in a lot of ways, especially with COVID, we did that too. We had to change the way we were thinking about things. The plan wasn't going to work, and we could see that in advance. And so we were going to back up and punt and do something different.
You want to talk specifics? What was your role during COVID? What did the EMA do?
COVID was first and foremost a Alabama Department of Public Health response in Alabama, or public health response nationwide, worldwide. So the emergency management role in that was to support public health with whatever things that they needed. And that's what emergency management does in almost all disasters, where the disaster starts locally and ends locally. And so those local jurisdictions that have the expertise in those type things really are in charge of those events. And the emergency management just stands by their side and holds their hand and has a toolbox, or sometimes we refer to as a toy box, of things that would help them reach their goals or finish up that whatever that disaster is. And so in COVID was the same situation where public health was the primary responder in this case. And so we were there just holding their hands, helping them with logistics, helping them run vaccine clinics and testing clinics. And we have point of distribution sites throughout the county that we had pre-planned for other incidents that we were able to incorporate, where we were bringing these large shipments of PPE in and then breaking those out into separate pallets for our entities and shipping them back out, or having people come by and pick them up. So we really served as, more than anything, a logistical and assistance with planning role during COVID for public health.
What else is in the toy box? What other specific assets do you have available?
Locally, we don't have a whole lot of things in Colbert County. We're a small county, but we do try to help with some of that. So we have our own hazardous material team here in Colbert County that's certified with the personnel to be a level 1 through the state. So that's part of the Alabama mutual aid system. We also have our own dive team here in the county. So we're blessed to have responders from law enforcement and EMS and fire come together and put those two teams together. And then we have a few minor things. We have a radio cache and a laptop cache and a mobile command post with communications equipment in it. One of the biggest things in there is our bridging capabilities to be able to set up at a scene and bridge multiple radio systems together so people can talk. That's always one of the biggest things you get into, whether it's exercise or a real case scenario, is nobody can talk to nobody else. And so we try to help mitigate that by bringing in communications equipment that'll tie those systems together. So, just a few little things like that. We don't have a whole lot of toys, but that's when it comes into play where if they need something that we don't have that maybe some other county has, well, we enact our county-to-county mutual aid and we reach out to some other county. And if one of those counties don't have what that need is, then we reach out to the state, and the state helps us find those resources. And eventually that may work its way up to a federal level, but it has to be a pretty large event for something like that to happen.
Do you guys coordinate with FEMA? Is that part of that chain?
Yeah, the biggest thing that we do with FEMA is disaster response and recovery for a federally declared disaster. So tornadoes of April 2011, or on the Gulf Coast, you may think about hurricanes coming in or something of that nature, something where we met this monetary threshold of damage to where we're going to get some federal funding assistance. And that's really the biggest part of what we deal with FEMA. Once it's got to a scale that we just absolutely could not handle, especially not at a local level, but then even at a state level either.
Talking about money, how does that work with EMA? Like who pays for the toys, and where does the funding come from?
So majority of the funding for emergency management at each local county level is from their own county commission. Now, in some cases, if there's cities, larger cities especially, that's in that county, those cities may put into that so that the emergency management agency helps every entity in the county or every municipality or town to be able to help plan for those disasters. And so they all kind of pool their money together. So the majority of the money does come from local funds. And then we also have an emergency management performance grant that comes down from FEMA to the state level, and then the state turns around and hands out grants to the counties that meet certain metrics that they set forth, whether it be training standards or exercise planning and exercise participation and things like that. And so if we meet all of those check marks, then we can get some funding from the state level through that EMPG. And then applying for Homeland Security grants and other local grants through the Colbert County Community Development Commission, which is TVA in lieu of tax money, or even federal funded type grants, BRIC grants and things of that nature through FEMA. So we never have enough funding because of the size of our county to have the things that we need to have. And in a lot of cases, the toys that we would like to have or could use, it really doesn't make sense. You may only use it once in a lifetime. And so does it really make sense to invest a huge sum of money into some toy like that for one-time use? And so we look at pooling our money together either regionally or applying for grants to be able to do that so that we can all share the benefit of that particular thing.
What's on your dream wish list if you had unlimited funding? What are some things that you would like to see or like to accomplish?
We do pretty good with the disasters and the responses that we have here. We have a great emergency notification system that we're able to pay for locally. We have a very expansive list of mitigation efforts that we put in place, 25 to 28 community storm shelters throughout the county, which is something that we're very proud of. There are lots of things that we could probably put on the list that wouldn't really make sense to have, but I don't even know how to answer that.
That's okay.
Question. I don't know. I guess it's just being in that role over the years. If you'd asked me that question 15 years ago, I could have quoted you exactly the toys that I wanted and how much each one of those costs and all that. But I never ever would have known how would we have ever paid for them. And now I just have this mindset of that when you ask something like that, the first thing that comes to my mind is, well, what really makes sense as far as using the money for the right thing and in the right way. And so it's really hard to even put anything down on paper or to list anything right now as far as what we would have. So let me think about that one.
That's why you're a good director. I've never been in any kind of leadership position or anything, but I would imagine when you start getting into money and local politics and all that, to me, that sounds like the bad part of the job.
And it's not bad, but you do have to be cognizant of it and you do have to be serious about it because it'll get you in a bind real quick if you are not on top of it and kind of looking ahead, because never fails if you decide to spend a lot of money on something and then all of a sudden something breaks down the line and now you don't have any reserve money to help take care of that.
What's it like being in a role like that? It's a pretty prominent, it's a prominent role. It's a very public facing role. What's that do to your private life?
Well, you never have any really, I would say, any privacy in that aspect because there's always somebody needing an answer to something, whether it be one of the commissioners or a 911 board member or one of your staff or the general public or media, or there's somebody constantly ringing your phone. There's never any off time. You might be able to, I was lucky enough to have a couple of folks on my staff that I felt very comfortable with leaving the keys with them if I did have to go out of town somewhere, and they were very capable and handled it without any issues. But at the same time, media especially, or even your own bosses, there's still going to be situations where they would rather call you as the director. They just want to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, And so even in those situations where you might be out of town, you still, when you're in that role, you still have to be ready to take those phone calls and be involved and know what's going on back at home. And you may not be there making decisions right on the front line, but you're still very deep in that decision-making process. So as far as private life goes, there was many times that, leave in the middle of a meal or a birthday party, or couldn't really even go on vacation without checking back in every day, or having taken phone calls business related. You couldn't just leave the phone somewhere. And so that's one of those things that really works hard on you mentally and physically, especially over a 27-year period. I was ready. A lot of folks do it for so much longer, and I applaud them for that. But we had that goal for me to get out as soon as I could, and I was ready to get out because I was ready to change my lifestyle and to do something different and take a little less stress off my shoulders.
Mike Melton was your predecessor?
Yes.
He was there for like forever, right?
Well, he had about 35 years total in the state retirement system. He previously worked for the county road department before he came to emergency management. But altogether, he had 35 or so years in emergency management. And bless his heart, he missed it so much when he got out that he actually now has came back out of retirement and is working part-time with Lauderdale County. So
really?
I applaud him for that. But I told my folks that when I left, I was done, and I would stay on the volunteer roster, but not expect to hear from me very much. So
okay, got you. Did it take you a minute to get used to that mindset of like, I don't have to be on call anymore?
So I'm really still doing that. I've had several people that when I started this new job in the private sector, I had a few people approach me and say, now listen, where for the past 27 years, when something came up or somebody made a phone call or sent you a text message or an email, you had a need to respond and fix it right then. He said, it don't work that way anymore. He said, in the private sector, he said, you have a process that you can go through and it takes a little time. And he said, you don't have to worry about answering the phone immediately or responding to an email immediately. So that has really been something that I've been trying to get used to in this new role, not taking that to bed with me and worrying about it all night until I get it taken care of. So it's still, I've had things on my mind. Now I have slept better, but I still go to bed at night with things on my mind. What are we holding today that I got to finish in the morning, or things of that nature? And now I have enjoyed, and I've done a pretty good job of at night or especially on the weekends when I know nothing's happening, is turning my phone on do not disturb and not worrying about it. When storms come through in the middle of the night, and normally I would get up and be watching radar or head into the office if it was some severe weather, is being able to just roll back over and go back to sleep. Sure. That's been amazing, and that has helped me tremendously. I've gotten used to that pretty quick.
Love that.
But I'm still working on it. And it'll take a little time. And I've had several folks who move from local and county government into this same private sector type role who I've been able to pick their brains about, and they've been giving me some good advice on that. And so take a little time, but it's getting there.
Good deal. I'm glad you got that advice, because I would imagine it'd be pretty easy for a company to take advantage of that mindset.
Probably so.
Bringing it back to the EMA role, how does EMA interact with the healthcare agencies, the hospitals and EMS services and that sort of thing?
Okay, so a couple of different ways. We do have a very good healthcare coalition in the Shoals area. And so with that coalition, which is a accumulation of not only emergency responders, but healthcare facilities such as hospital and EMS providers, but even long-term care facilities are all involved in that. And so just being a partner in that has really helped. And that's something that while we had the healthcare coalition before COVID, we really ramped things up and learned a lot of stuff during COVID. And so now that coalition is better than ever. I mean, they have taken the bull by the horns and are running rampant with exercises and funding opportunities and really making things better. And so Emergency management, it just stands right in there beside them and is just a partner in them to help with planning purposes and logistical purposes, just like we do in a real response. Same goes for just even being involved with EMS. So 911, of course, dispatches for the ambulance services here in Colbert County, but then emergency management also just has that role to make sure that the EMS has the tools that they need to be able to provide. So if there's ever a situation, whether it be a day-to-day operation or some type of mass casualty incident that EMS is running into for the day, EMA will be standing right by their side to provide whatever resources that they may need or reach out somewhere else to get those resources in. One of the things we've been trying to do is get everybody on a similar communication system. And EMS here in Colbert County has done a really good job of buying into that and trying to see what we've got to offer and what we can find that would make it better for them to be able to communicate with themselves even, but then also with everybody else at a county and a regional level.
Yeah, communication is a big deal. I can say out in the middle of an incident when you can't talk to the people over there,
It's always the thing. You come out of you do an after-action report after a real event or after an exercise, and the number one problem was always communications. The A side can't talk to the B side, and we still are digging hard trying to do that. And ultimately what that comes down to is funding. Communication systems would, cost in Colbert County, you're looking at probably $3 to $5 million. And then annual maintenance on top of that to continue to maintain that type of stuff. So individually, these agencies, and even as a whole, us as a county, just can't afford something like that, although it is definitely something that's needed. So that's when we start looking at not only looking for grants at both local and federal, state and federal levels, but also trying to regionalize some stuff. And instead of trying to build a county-wide communication systems, maybe we build a regional communication systems amongst 5 counties in Northwest Alabama. So we all pool our money together because especially in the case of communications, one radio tower may cover sections of 2 or 3 different counties. And so if everybody can benefit from that, why not share the money and share the resources together so it benefits everybody?
It sounds simple when you put it at that high level, but even I know enough to know, like when you have 6 different agencies just in one county and they all have their procedures and they all have their equipment and their frequencies and I'm sure it would be a nightmare trying to coordinate all that into one common, here's what we're going to do.
Exactly. And then you get in, you mentioned that, you kind of get into, I don't want to say turf wars.
I'll say it.
Well, Colbert County is very blessed because we have amazing emergency response leaders who come together and work together all the time. But what you just mentioned about, certain entities, law enforcement, for example, they have some procedures in the way that they do things that are different than the way fire or EMS does things. And so making all that work together is hard. And so it does take some buy-in at that point, some decisions to be made is what could I give up on this side to be able to come together for this side so that we could all be on the same system together and work together and have something overall that would be a tremendous asset.
One thing that I always thought was cool about Madison County is separate radio systems, but all the communications people are in the same room together. They had this super complicated computer messaging CAD system, all this stuff. But when it came right down to it, if there was some question, Himsey's dispatcher would stand up and holler at Huntsville Fire, "Hey, what are you doing?" I thought, what a simple solution to the problem. Just put everybody in the same room.
Yeah. So they're a little bit different over there than we have a central communications center in Colbert County for a majority of the agencies that we dispatch for. But the difference in the way we do it here and the way Madison County does it, for example, in Madison County, each entity has representation in that communication system, but those people still work for that entity. And so they're still able to follow their own policies and procedures and do things the way they want to do them. In Colbert County, our communication center, all the employees work for the 911 district. And so we have one set of policies and procedures that everybody has to follow. And in a lot of ways, that made it tougher on us because it was requiring us to try to get the buy-in from the entities that we dispatch for to change a little bit of the way that we do things, because we don't want our dispatchers to have to remember 14 different ways of doing things. Today, I come in, I'm dispatching for this agency, and they want me to give their dispatch out in this manner. And tomorrow, I come in, I'm dispatching for a separate agency, and they want me to do it a different way. And that makes it tough on our folks.
Yeah.
And so that was probably one of the biggest challenges we had in that type of setup, is trying to build policies and procedures that blanketed everybody and all the agencies in a way that it would make it easy for our folks to remember and be able to do, and still provide a high level of service to the people and to the responders.
It was always very reassuring to me as a field person, just knowing that everybody was out there together. If I needed something, I always felt very reassured that they were there.
Yes. Regardless of which way you do it, that is ultimately the goal of any communications in any county, is for them to all be either co-located or centralized, all in the same room together. Having all these separate communication centers spread throughout a county becomes just this roadblock of information, because as good as the technology is, where we can tie everybody's CADs together and we can share information back and forth, it's just like you said, when you could stand up and say something to the person in the pod next to you, it just cuts out all that. It just makes things much clearer.
And shout out to all the dispatchers and communication specialists and all that out there. I probably was guilty when I was working in the field of like getting mad and that shouldn't be our call. But so reassuring. And there were specific dispatchers that I felt better when they were working.
Yeah.
Joey Sibley, Leslie Esslinger, if you guys are listening to this, I love you guys. I felt safer when you were working. It makes a huge, huge difference.
Yes.
And I apologize to anybody that hopefully I never keyed a radio and yelled at anybody, but I apologize to anybody that I may have offended. But really, that is such an important link in the chain that I think probably goes unrecognized by a lot of people when it comes to accolades.
We've done a very good job, I would say, of trying to change that and make sure that people do realize what they do behind the mic. For a long time, it was, if you go to EMT school or while you're in EMT school, you go do a ride along with the ambulance or all that. And then we started a program where our dispatchers are actually going out and doing ride alongs so they can see what's happening on the other side of the mic. And right as I was leaving, we were starting a program to where we were asking the responders to come sit a shift in dispatch so that they would know what's going on behind the mic and that they're not the only responder in the county that we're dealing with at that moment. We have 10 other things going on. And so it really opened some eyes, and the first few folks, they got to come down and sit with those shifts and see what happens behind the mic. And that program will continue to grow and I think do good things for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. That was a mandatory part of HIMSE's orientation for field people, was to go sit up there for a shift and see what happens.
That's cool.
And you're right, it is eye-opening for sure. We talked about COVID. What are some other memorable incidents, if you want to talk about anything that you were involved with while you were the director?
Well, not necessarily while I was the director, but one of the biggest things that will always be in my mind as something that we helped respond to was the air evac crash. That was just something that not only was it just a horrible incident of its own anyway, but the fact that all of our responders are so close and we all know each other, and 3 very important people personally in all of our lives perished that night. And so that response is something that will always be right at the top of the list as far as things that we were assisting with and how did we recover from that in the future. And so many things changed from an air medical standpoint after that incident, not only here in our county, but nationwide. Then secondly, probably is the April 2011 tornado outbreak. That was something that affected us at a statewide level that took us a long time to recover from. And although we didn't have any particular damage to speak of here in Colbert County that day, just the response that we assisted with in our surrounding counties to provide mutual aid, it affected many of our responders, even locally, just because of the things that they saw and the things that they had to do during that incident. I never will forget my director at the time, Mike Melton. He had surgery and was in the hospital. And so it was really left up to me and the current deputy director, Lance Young, to respond to that. And we had set up a schedule that we had kind of had some storms the day before and throughout the night before. And so the EOC was activated and Lance was going to stay the night. And I was going to go home and get some sleep and then come back the next day and let him go home and get some rest. So I did that. I went home, and then line of storms came through at like 4:00 that morning. And so as soon as we went under that tornado warning, I started getting up and getting ready to come back into the office, even though it was before I was supposed to. But it was the weirdest thing because where we live at, we are not within hearing distance of a outdoor warning siren. And never, ever have I heard an outdoor warning siren out there. But when I went out the back door that morning, it was so eerily quiet that I could hear an outdoor warning siren at my house. And I just had chills run over my body, and I knew something just told me that was fixing to be one heck of a day. So worked my way on into the office, and Lance ended up staying for most of the day anyway, because it kind of got busy with us. And then that afternoon when the big ones hit Hackleburg and Phil Campbell and came on up through Lawrence County and into Limestone, and we just started sending responders out everywhere we could. We had to make sure that storms were kind of through for us, and we weren't sending our folks out and leaving ourselves high and dry. But once we found out that we really didn't have much to respond to and things were okay, we started sending volunteers and paid departments and EMS units and law enforcement, mutual aid, everywhere that we could think of, all over North Alabama and Western Alabama especially. And that was just one of those, it was a day that you won't ever forget, but it turned into weeks and months really in the recovery process, because even after the response was over and all of that kind of died down, we were still sending people out to help in the cleanup and recovery efforts. And so it was just a long event that really worked on a lot of folks mentally and physically. And so that definitely is another one that we'll always remember. And the other things, I don't say we do regularly, but once or twice a year, we'll always have some type of high impact drowning event where we will have a command post set up at the river and for a week or two trying to search for literally a needle in a haystack, when you're searching for a drowning person, especially in the Tennessee River. So those turns out to be high impact events that really put you behind in your regular day-to-day work, but it also gives you an opportunity to kind of think about how you are responding to things and how you can do things better. And with technology changing, some of the equipment that you might have or might be able to obtain for a future event that would help make that work better. Previously, we would have a water rescue event or a recovery event that we would try to work it ourselves as long as we could before we called in any expensive assistance from outside our area, from somewhere else in the state or out of state. And we kind of changed our mindset on that now. There's so many agencies now that have this great technology, whether it be underwater drones or things of that nature, specialized sonar, 3D sonar and things of that nature, that kind of helps narrow things down a lot faster, gives you a better picture of what underwater looks like. So we start calling those people immediately now, especially because some of those people may be coming from South Alabama, maybe Daphne or out of Baldwin County somewhere or something like that, or Dothan. So we want to make sure that those folks are on the way immediately, and they're happy to do it. They know when they get that equipment that they have something specialized that could be used anywhere, and they're happy to load it up and start heading that way. And so every new event gives you an opportunity to reflect back and think about how you responded and how it could be better next time. And it always helps you or makes you change your mind on or change your way of thinking on what happens the next time.
You already kind of hit on several specific things, but I guess is there anything else just in the field that you saw change or improve? Or
at the end of the day, the goals are still the same as far as preparing for an incident, responding to the incident, recovering from it, and then that emergency management circle just starts over again. You start thinking about mitigation and preparedness for the next time. And it's just this cycle that continues around and around. But one thing that has changed that helps us in those processes now is definitely the technology. Although it has been a double-edged sword. So it does give us more tools to help us predict and to prepare for and respond to particular incidents, but it also gives us more vulnerabilities that we have to plan for. And so we talked about cybersecurity issues earlier. The more things we put into the cloud, for example, then the bigger chance of us losing some information or becoming too reliable on that particular resource being available and then getting out somewhere and it's not available. And so we have to make sure that we are planned and prepared for and have that backup, so to speak, should that technology fail. But I would say that's probably the biggest thing that's changed for us over time and over the years that I've been in it is just that increase in technology and the way it has helped us be better prepared and get the word out to people. I mean, previously the only way to get the word out to people would have been either outdoor warning sirens or NOAA weather radio. And while we encourage people not to rely on an outdoor warning siren while they're in bed asleep at night, it's called an outdoor warning siren for a reason. The NOAA weather radio still is a very high priority item that we encourage people to have for severe weather. But now technology is so good and everybody's got a cell phone. And so we're able to send out alerts to people's cell phone, whether it be through a text message or a push alert or a wireless emergency alert message for anything, whether it be severe weather events or an evacuation need for a hazardous material spill or just anything in between. The Department of Transportation has actually started using wireless emergency alerts for road closures. So if they have a major highway that they're going to have to shut down for any reason for an extended amount of time, they'll set up a polygon. And if you drive into that polygon, you'll get a WEA alert on your cell phone. And so that, to me, has helped us tremendously in being able to notify our citizens and the people who are traveling through to know what's going on and help make better decisions on protecting themselves.
That's a really cool thing. And actually, that's something I'm curious about if you want to talk more specifically about how it works. When my phone tells me there's a tornado warning or when the Amber Alert goes off in the middle of the night, like how does that happen? Where does that come from? Who types those messages?
So for severe weather purposes, all that comes through the National Weather Service, but they're using the same technology. And really they were using the technology first, and we just kind of started tapping into it ourselves and having the abilities to be able to send our own alerts. And there was even a point in time where we were able to have an alert sent through that technology, but we didn't have direct access to it like we do now. So now we have our own accounts and we log in directly and we can send our own things. And previously we might have to go through the weather service to actually send some of those alerts out. But what happens is, and it's all part of this new technology, every cell phone has a GPS chip in it and it knows exactly where you're at all times. And so when a particular tornado warning, for example, is in place, you've heard James Spann say, respect the polygon. So they draw this area out on the map and they can send this alert out just to that geographical area. And if your cell phone GPS puts you inside that polygon, then you get the alert. And if you're outside that polygon, then you don't get the alert. Previously, before we had that kind of technology, if somewhere in Colbert County was under a tornado warning, the whole county got warned. And so it might just be a storm that barely clips Riverton and is going to cross over the river into Lauderdale. And nobody else in Colbert really is going to be affected by it. Now, with this technology, we don't have to warn everybody in the county. There's been lots of studies done that shows that overwarning folks tends to lead them to not rely on that anymore and not pay attention to it. And then when there is a need for them to pay attention to it, it's too late.
Alarm fatigue, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So we're trying our best to try to figure out ways to balance that. Like, we still think that if weather conditions are bad enough to form a tornado in one part of the county, more than likely they are that bad in the entire county, and you could have severe weather at some point in the other part of the county. And so we want people to be aware of what's going on. We don't want them to just cut it off and not hear anything unless they get a warning. But at the same time, we don't want to fatigue them with continuous warnings over and over and over for areas that don't have anything to do with them. So that's been a big help for us to be able to do that. And that wireless emergency alert technology really helps that. And you see other things come across that too. Like I said, Department of Transportation is using that now for road closures. We can use it for road closures or evacuation type events. You will have blue alerts and Amber alerts and things like that. That's all the same technology. It's all using wireless emergency alerts coming across your phone. That's the things that we're listening to in those aspects.
You want to talk about the new role and what you're doing with that?
Sure. So I've taken a role as a project manager for a company called InDigital. They are based out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, and they originally were a accumulation of telephone providers in the area that eventually morphed into a provider of next generation 911 core services. And so what that means is, where previously 911 calls were delivered over a copper pair telephone line, things with technology have changed, and the needs of information that we get from a call or through a 911 call have changed. And so currently in Alabama, we have what we call the ANGEN network. It's the Alabama Next Generation Emergency Network. And it's a statewide network that all the 911 calls are delivered across. So what that provides us the ability to do now, instead of it coming across this copper phone wire and coming across this Ethernet connection, basically, just at a high level, it's more complicated than that. And I could never be able to describe it the way their technical guys do, but that allows us to provide so much more opportunity of information sharing, not only between ourselves, but from the caller to us and us back to the caller. So now we're able to provide texting to 911 and texting from 911. We're able to send the caller a link and them click on it and us view their camera on their phone in dispatch. Yes. So this has all become available based on this building of the EZNet by this company called InDigital. And there's other companies that do that too, but InDigital is kind of the leader in the nation that's doing this. So they have services in 23 states, and several of those states are statewide services. And here in Alabama, it's a statewide service. They work with the Alabama 911 board to provide that service to every emergency communication district in the state of Alabama. And so just that technical side of it, I've been real interested and attracted to that for the past few years. And I knew as I was coming up close to retirement that would be something I'd love to be involved in. And so it just happened that as I was getting closer, within about 6 or 8 months of retiring, they had a project manager position for Alabama to come open. And so put that application in, and took a little time. And I had some folks tell me that, you have to, in private sector, don't always move the fastest when it comes to employment type stuff. And so it did. It took a few months for it all to process through, and took a trip up to their headquarters in Fort Wayne and worked a day with them up there just to make sure that it was what I thought it was going to be, and that they liked me and that they knew. But it all worked out. And so I'm working from home primarily. So I have a home office, working projects mainly in Alabama. As they grow, they have a few sites in Georgia and South Carolina. And as those projects grow, I think that they'll end up giving me some of those as well. But I'm just real excited to be able to stay in the business, so to speak, still working with the same people that I've worked with for all these years, but just helping them from a different point of view. Just yesterday, I was in a couple of small counties that haven't really taken advantage of the technology. And so just being able to go out there and show them what it can do for them and how it can make their job easier, and test all their stuff at the same time. But just being with them and talking to them and just seeing their face light up when they say, man, it can do that, and I could do this with my job now. And I know exactly where these people are. There's one company that we partner with. It now is in a majority of the state, called Rapid SOS. And it not only is providing exact pinpoint locations of a 911 cell phone caller, and if they're traveling down the highway, it's leaving this breadcrumb trail of where they are. But if you program all your emergency contact information in your iPhone, for example, or your medical history and all that, well, if you call 911 and they're a subscriber to Rapid SOS, all that stuff shows up to the dispatcher. Wow. And so if you call 911 and don't say anything, they at least know some information about you, medical history, who an emergency contact is, and they can see exactly where you are. I tell kids when I go talk to them at schools now, or did, that technology has gotten so well that if you're playing on your phone at school and you're in the cafeteria and you dial 911, I can almost tell you what seat you're sitting in the cafeteria. It's amazing at the technology, especially the location services that we were able to obtain now. And so that's all part of what InDigital does, is they help build those networks out, provide the equipment to be able to receive that information and then maintain it over time, and then continue to work to make it better. So everything that we've done over the years with InDigital, they're constantly looking at ways to make it even better for the next go around. And so I was very interested in that, and just was very blessed to be able to land that opportunity with them.
So you're saying that if I need 911, I can send them a text message?
In Alabama, you can. Okay. Now, it's not everywhere. Yeah, there are lots of places that are text to 911 capable, but in Alabama, there are 100% text to 911 capable. So, example of that is if you are, which in today's world, people would rather text than talk to somebody anyway.
Oh, me too, for sure. I'd be way more likely to call 911 for somebody if I didn't actually have to make a phone call. Hell yeah.
Right. And we would prefer you to call instead of text, but the slogan that we've got out there is call if you can, text if you can't. But, some of the examples that we think about in those situations, if you're home alone and somebody's breaking into the house and you're hiding in the closet, and you really don't want to make a voice call because you don't want them to hear you talking on the phone. Well, being able to text that information to 911 is the perfect example of why something like that exists, and to be able to pinpoint that exact location of where it's at. So even if you can't tell us anything hardly except somebody's breaking in, we have a pretty good chance of being able to find you and send folks to you.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it.
Well, next time something happens to me, I'm just going to send a selfie and be like, do I need to worry about this?
So on the texting part right now, you can just text.
Okay.
You like the, but with the, if they subscribe to Prepared, which in Alabama, we have the state board pays for that with funding from the state. And so that's the portion of it where they could send you a link. You can click on that link and we could see your cell phone video. And that's something there's a lot of people that are hesitant about that. They're like, I don't want them to see my camera. What happens when we hang up? Are you going to be able to watch me forever? And that's not the case. First of all, you have to click on that link and it's going to ask you for permission to view your camera and you have to say yes. So that's two things you have to go through there. And then when the call's over and we end the session, then that goes away. And so we can never see your camera again unless you click another link and provide that permission for it to happen. So that's been something that's been a little bit of a challenge, getting people to trust us enough to be able to actually click the link in the first place. But then you got some people who are like, oh, heck yeah, I'll push that right there and let you see this. And then that brings on other situations to where are our dispatchers ready to see some of these things? Whether it be some traumatic incident with blood and gore everywhere or some large fire, or in some cases, it's something like just even a person with no clothes on that they really didn't anticipate, that somebody may call in and say, you know, my grandmother's having this medical episode. I really don't know what's going on with her. And they offer to do that just so we could look at their face and see if they're having a stroke, for example. But a majority of the time, and you know as well as I do, as many years as you've worked on the ambulance, most of the time when somebody has a medical incident, they probably don't have many, if it any at all, clothes on. And so the first few times that some of our dispatchers got a glimpse of that, you know, without preparing themselves for that, they were like, oh, I'm going to quit sending this link to folks because I don't want to see that anymore. And so that was some things that we really didn't anticipate when this technology became available, is what is that going to do to the mental capabilities of our people that work for us? And so we had to, again, go back and think about what we need to prepare them for. What do we need to train them for? How can we do that better so that they're either ready to see it or they are making better decisions on what they're actually sending that option out to and not.
That's so interesting. I wouldn't have thought about that either, really.
We don't either until we run into it.
Yeah, you know,
right. Every policy that's on the books is because of something that's happened that we either needed to fix or change the way we did. And so we have to write a policy on it, you know.
I have long thought that it would be a much better idea to have a physician sitting at the 911 center to answer the call, talk about, triage the patient, and then go, you can stay home, instead of sending the cavalry for every single person that thinks they have an emergency. And that kind of system would be so ideal for that.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. And I've seen some places where they are pulling like nurses and things like that in to do some call taking triage in some particular cases. And then given some opportunity, and you probably know more about this, but I've seen in some places where they're giving the paramedics the opportunity to go out to a scene and just treat a patient and leave them instead of transporting them, you know, based on what the situation is. And I don't know where that's at in Alabama or if it's even started, but I think, again, as we run into more and more of that and people I won't say taking advantage of the system, but using the system, I think we'll have more and more things change for responders and call takers in that aspect, to have more resources available to them to make better decisions on whether to deplete and send your last ambulance to somebody who really didn't need an ambulance, you know. Yeah,
that's such a huge problem in EMS, and I'm sure in all the other public safety areas too. Man, that's exciting thinking about how that could come about. I think we probably get stuck in the, like, you know, I have all this experience and that's just how it is and that's always how it's going to be. But man, it'll be exciting to see what's going on in 20 years or whatever.
Yes. We're definitely not, 20 years ago, we were watching the Jetsons and going to have flying cars by now. And, we're definitely not in that. But so many things have changed in 20 years and made exponentially better. So who knows what's going to happen in the next 20.
If people are interested in going into your field, whether it's management or the tech side of it or communications, what direction would you recommend people take?
It's not for everybody, whether it be just response agencies or 911 or emergency management or anywhere in between. I would highly recommend that you either do some type of intern work or volunteer work, or just kind of like I did when I was in high school, just go hang out a few hours on the weekend. And first of all, just see, is it something that you really want to get into? Because it does take some investment. And I don't mean monetary investment, although it does take a little monetary investment, but I mean investment of your time and your life. And you want to make sure that if you're going to be serious about getting into it, that it's something that you really want to do. So first of all, I would say intern or volunteer a little time, go hang out a few shifts and just make sure that it is what you think it is and that it's something that you want to do. Be open-minded. So you decide that you do want to get into it. It's not always going to be what's written in the books. It's not always going to be the plans that you have in place are not always going to follow that particular checklist. You got to be open-minded. You got to think out of the box. You got to be able to shift on the fly. And sometimes you have to back up and punt and do something different or do something over, or you have to be able to own up to some mistakes and realize that what you did probably wasn't right. And next time you have to do it a little bit better. So realize that it's not going to be a Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 job. It is a 24/7, 365 job. It don't matter what's going on. You're going to miss Christmases. You're going to miss birthday parties and sporting events and other important things that's going on in your personal life. Disasters don't stop. Disasters don't take a holiday off. Emergencies, don't care what time of day it is. So I would say just make sure you are ready for something like that as well. Kind of back to the textbook thing where everything is not textbook. If you want to get that degree for it, you decide just what you want to do and you want to go get an emergency management degree, then I highly encourage you to go for it. I will say many, many times experience far outweighs the educational aspect of it. If I had the opportunity to hire somebody who is fresh out of college with an emergency management degree, as opposed to somebody who didn't have a degree but has been working in the field for 15 or 20 years, by all means, I'm going to hire the experienced person. We can get them all their certifications and things that are needed. You don't have to have a degree to work in this field unless the particular agency requires a degree just to be employed. But in Colbert County, you don't have to have a degree, and in many places you don't. And so we really like to get people in and get them some experience and train them on the job. If you get the degree and you want to do that, then we encourage it. Go for it. Absolutely. Don't want to turn that down at all. And it makes a great experience as well. And you kind of get to learn things that maybe aren't just from Colbert County, but from everywhere else in the world too. But just realize that everything you learn in the textbook, kind of going back to that, is not really the way it works out in the field. And so those are, I guess the biggest thing is, and all those kind of sounded kind of negative Nancy toward the toward the field, but it's just kind of being true and honest. I mean, you got to realize, you got to look at it in a realistic way and realize that many times it's great to be able to go out and help somebody in their worst nightmares, help somebody who is just hunkered down in their closet during a tornado, but they survived, and you're able to go out and help them get some assistance in some way and help rebuild their lives. That's very rewarding to be able to do stuff like that. But there's a whole lot of heartache that comes in between it before you get to that point. And so you have to just be open-minded and realize that there's going to be a lot of tough times to get to the good times.
Don't come for the naked pictures.
Definitely not.
It's not the people you want to see who are calling 911, I promise.
Definitely not.
So in 2016, you took a big left turn. You helped develop the fire sciences curriculum to add to the career tech program in the county schools, and then ended up applying to be the teacher for that program. You want to talk about how that came about?
Being on the school schedule, being off in the summers, and when severe weather hits, staying at home and not coming to work. And I was like, man, that stuff really sounds tempting, and at the end of the day, decided to take a leap and jump and see where we landed. And that was probably some of the best 2 years of my career. Changed me in a lot of ways, in the way that I approached people and the way that I talked to people and thought about people, making relationships with some of the students that I had over those, even though it's just over that 2 year period. I mean, it was just amazing to see the way how you can influence somebody to be a better person and to do things with their life that they probably thought that they couldn't do. And you just give them a little bit of encouragement. It just really, really, really helped me tremendously. It was a big blessing to me. When I left the school system, it was harder for me to tell my students that I was leaving than it was for me to tell my boss, who was Principal Pam Worsham at the time. And I pretty easily went up there and let her know that I'd been offered the director position to go back to 911 EMA. But telling my kids, man, that was so tough. It was so tough because I had formed some relationships with them and still with many of them stay in constant contact with them throughout the day or throughout the years, and seeing them grow up and get married and starting families of their own. It's just been real humbling for me. But it also helped me, and I told when I interviewed for the EMA position, the director position, I told the commission that too, that being in that school system setting and dealing with students who may not have the best home life, that you really don't realize what's going on at home until you start having a relationship with these folks, with these kids, made me really change the way that I approached people and talked to people and dealt with people. And I felt like it changed me for the better. So I felt like that it was almost preparing me to move into that director position so I could be a better person to my employees, as opposed to what I would have been if had I just went straight into that position without being in the school system and having those relationships and learning those things. So when I got hired in the position, and then I started working in the role and started having one-on-one meetings with all my employees, one of the things that I told all of them is people are a little bit different these days. The younger ones especially, they didn't grow up the way we grow up. They don't do the things that we did growing up. You know, if we knew it was important to come to work and be there on time, and of course we didn't have cell phones at the time probably, but we came in and we did our jobs and we went home. And nowadays it's tougher to get people to do that because there's so many other distractions in place, and they are thinking about other things that may be more important than going to work and making money and things of that nature. And so we didn't want to have to baby those people and really give in to them for the things that they wanted. But we did have to come up with a different way of approaching them to make them see the importance of what was needed on the job, as opposed to the things that they thought was important. And so just being in that school role position just helped me to address that in so many ways and be a different person toward other people. And I just, that was the best 2 years of my life, and I very much enjoyed it. And if the school system wasn't state retirement, I would have went back to the school system because I just loved it and I missed it so much. And I had considered going across state lines. Many people that retire from the school system go to another state and work another career over there, you know, and draw 2 retirements. And I had considered maybe doing that if the right program had failed or the right opportunity had fell in my lap. But I missed it very much. It was a great opportunity and a great experience.
I'm married to a teacher, and I always imagine that I would not last 10 minutes in a classroom with a bunch of kids. But those kids were lucky to have you, and I'm glad it was a good experience for you too.
I probably had it a little bit different than a regular core teacher, so to speak, because, you know, nobody wants to sit in class and do, well, I say nobody, most people don't want to sit in class and do math or science or history or something like that. But the students that I had in firefighting were students that wanted to be there. They wanted to do something like that. And so it was real easy to keep their attention. It wasn't always textbook. It was getting out in the drill field and putting equipment on and going through the steps and being hands-on and physical with it. And so that made it easy for me. I probably had a little bit of advantage. Really, all the career tech programs have an advantage over the core programs because of that aspect of it. So I loved it. I fell in love with career tech. I didn't do anything in high school that was tech school type related. I didn't do FFA or auto body or welding or none of that stuff. And so I really had never tasted any of that. But man, I fell in love with career tech when I got in that program, and a big advocate of it now. I serve on the county's career tech advisory board now. And so it's something that I will always believe in and always push in the school systems going forward.
Yeah, I went to Calhoun's graduation a couple of days ago, and I was really impressed at how many dual enrollment students were graduating with their certificates in welding and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Man, it's so smart.
Yeah, you can leave high school now with a certification in anything and go straight to work with no debt. You know, why would you not?
Yes, agreed. My dad and I were just talking about that this morning. Like, if there's not some particular thing that you have to have a particular degree or certification for, why go to college and get a degree in English or whatever? Yeah. No offense to the English majors.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. If there's something that you're going to do that requires it, or if that's just what you want to do, like I talked about earlier in the EMA side of it, if you want to get that degree, by all means, go and get it. And especially if you have the financial ability to go get it, if you can get scholarships or you're okay with your student loans or whatever, by all means, go and get it. That's one of the things that Ethan has really enjoyed. He's his first 2 years at Northwest Shoals, he went in and he done his work and he got things done and he got his first degree over there. But he didn't really have the college experience, and so he was still coming home every day, and it was just like him going to high school, really. So when he decided to spend a year at Northeast Mississippi and stay in the dorm and just be away from home and have that college experience and be on his own, it really changed him as a person. And he enjoyed that so much. And we could even see that he has just matured so much and has made him such a better person. He's made lifetime friends over there, people that he would not normally have known or been associated with. And so many connections now in the field that he's going to be going into. And so just being able to get out and have that college life experience is a positive thing. And if you want to go do that, by all means, definitely don't want to deter anybody from doing that. But if you're ready to just go straight to work and you can get that certification in high school and go do that and make good money, do it. By all means, do it.
Well, that seems like a pretty good place to stop. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover? Is there what didn't I ask you that I should have asked you?
I don't know. There's probably a whole lot of things. We could probably talk for 5 hours about it, but we've done a pretty good job of it. I appreciate you having me. I enjoy talking about this stuff. And once you get to talking, you don't realize how much time has passed, and you start thinking about these things that have happened over the years and the good times that we have had and all the good things that we've done. And it's just amazing that we are where we are now. It's crazy to think about that. Here it has been 27 years and now moving on to other things. And so, we always long for that day to be able to retire. But then you think, man, if the last 27 years went by this fast, what's going to happen the next 27 years? And so life changes and you start thinking about stuff like that and slowing down a little bit and making sure you're taking in things that you've missed over all this time, making sure that you be a little more respectful of other people and being with your family as much as you can and things of that nature. I've had, of course, Rena works for the school system and she's home during the summer anyways. But working in emergency management, I didn't get the summers off except for the 2 years that I also worked in the school system. So a lot of people have said is, well, this summer when she's home, you're going to be home too. Are y'all going to be able to stand each other after you together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? And I said, well, I love her enough. I think I can probably make it happen. So yeah. So we're looking forward to it. We're wanting to travel some, and this is going to give us working from home or working remotely, I should say, will give us opportunity for me to still be able to work some but still travel as we want to as well. So we're looking forward to that.
Congratulations. You've earned it. And I hope the next chapter goes well for you, and come back anytime. I really enjoyed talking with you.
The only thing that I guess I really want to add in there too is for all of the years that I've done this, so many people that I've given credit to that's helped me through my career and all the people that we look up to and the people who are mentors to us and all that thing. But the people that really never have gotten full recognition is my family. They have been there when I've had to miss all those important events. They've been there to help take up the slack, and they've been there for me to vent to when I get home or to cry on the shoulder with when it's just been one of those days. And I just cannot thank my family enough. You really just don't realize what the people around you are going through while you're going through some things too. And so to just be done with it now and to be able to focus my time back on them, I am so looking forward to that. I just cannot get enough of that as well. And I'm at this point in my life to where my son, he's just finished up his first few years of college, and he's thinking he's engaged and maybe about to move out soon. And so I'm really trying to not miss very much with him while I can. And then my daughter is coming into her prime years in high school and involved in so much, and we're trying to make sure we're there and being involved with that so I don't miss anything else. I don't want to miss anything else from my kids. I don't want to miss anything else from my wife or my family. And we live on this compound out there. My mother lives right behind us, and my sister-in-law and her husband, brother-in-law, they live next door. And then Rena's parents live the next house down. And so we're all right there together. And sometimes I'm like, what are we doing? But then at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know that I would realize anything else. We've always been family right here together. And we've always been really kind of all involved in the same type of stuff. At some point in time, all the family, with the exception of my mother, have been in either the rescue squad or the fire department or in some type of emergency services. And so that's helped out a lot too. But as we grow older and the days go by faster and the years go by faster, then things change in the way you think about things, and just try to hold on to what you got. And so I wanted to just say that to my family, thank you for all those years, and thank you for the love and things are going to be awesome from here on out. And thank you, man. You have been an awesome dude too. I mean, thank you for all the time that we spent together down here. It's been great. And like I said, I was thinking about that the other night after we talked about all the calls we've run together and just the shenanigans that you get into, and especially 1:00 in the morning coming back from a call back to the squad building and just acting crazy and being out of our heads and just laughing. That's my favorite thing, is just to laugh about something.
Yeah.
So I love that. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate what you're doing with this, because this gives people an opportunity to talk about things, things that they probably wouldn't normally talk about regularly or even have an opportunity to. And kind of like some of the things we've talked about here today, you may start out with one question, but it kind of segues into something else and kind of opens the door for you to just spill your heart out. And so I appreciate that. It's a good thing you're doing here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the kind words. And that was a beautiful sentiment to end on about your family. I love that. And when your audio engineer son hears this, hopefully you won't. Ethan, don't make too much fun of me when you hear this. But I would like a list of all the things that I could do to make this better.
I was going to say, when you get big with this, making big money now, and you need a sound guy, he'll probably be looking for a job.
So I'll say this too. I don't know if this even registered with you, but you also used to let me come out and hang out with you at the 911 place.
Yeah.
When you were dispatching at night. And that was like a bad time in my life. I was just lonely and in college, and being up there with you just made me feel better about life. And I really appreciate that time and you letting me show up unannounced and harass you while you were at work.
I appreciate you saying that. That just goes back to, like, just being kind to people, and you never know what's going on in somebody's life. And you may not ever know until 20 years later that something was going on in somebody's life. And just being kind to people, man, it just helps people get to the next day. And that's all they need, is they just need to get to the next day. And so I appreciate you saying that. I really do.
I really would just bebop up there. I remember if I called you or knocked on the door, hey, let me in.
Yeah.
You never turned me away. You're always lovely to me.
Hey, those weekends that I would go when I was in high school and hang out with them, I would do that. And of course, I didn't have a cell phone then, so I'd go to the payphone on the corner in Tuscumbia and call them and say, hey, I'm out here at the front door. Will you let me in?
Well, you paid it forward then. I appreciate that.
Yes.
All right, Michael David Smith, thanks again for your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, that does it for this episode of Knowledgeable Provider. I'm your host, Jody Marks. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to like, subscribe, or follow on your preferred listening platform. Give us a nice 5-star rating and leave a nice review. If you'd like to help support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/knowledgeableprovider. And as always, stay safe, take care of yourself, and take care of your patients in that order.
Yep.
It's a good way to start. Michael David, you go by Michael David Smith?
Either way, yeah. Michael David, Doc, MD, Sniffles, whatever.
Okay.
You have to think about those things and keep that in the back of your mind. So
Sure. Is that the train?
It is.
I was like,
it is. Welcome back to Cherokee.